Wonderful creatures of earth, how are you doing today? Thanks a lot for clicking this video. You are loved and respected. Let me put you up to speed with what we shall be doing today, which, my friend, is reacting together to videos. Videos from different places across the whole world, from different humans, with different messages. And all these videos, my friend, we react to them with the intentions of spreading love to the whole world, uniting all earthlings, making sure everyone is forgiving to their neighbor as they would love to be forgiven, and above all, my friend, living with honesty. Now, good vibe soul, we shall be doing that together. So kindly hit that subscribe button if you haven't. Watch till the end, grab some snacks, hit that like button, and be ready to leave comments because the videos you have today, my friends, are something else. But now, let's hear from some good vibes book of wisdom before we get to seeing the videos I'm telling you about. And today, the place you are reading from the Good Vibes book comes from Proverbs 3:5. This is what it says: Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge Him, and He will make your paths straight. Praise be to God, my friend. We really acknowledge our Creator, my friend, and we know it's because of the Creator that we have been gathered here together. So let's give thanks before we dive in also. Dear Lord Father, thank you for your goodness, Father. Thank you for the breath of life in each and every one of us. All glory and honor belong unto you, Father. Dear Lord, today we have been joined by one of your wonderful souls that you created, Father. Help us together to spread love to the whole world. Forgive us all our sins, Father. Fill us with your Spirit and help us to understand the videos, Father. In Jesus' mighty name, we do pray, trusting and believing. Amen. Let's dive in good vibes soul. Lots of love. Flood barriers hold back water from flooding hospital. Oh my God, this is crazy. This is interesting. Some good vibes soul here became helpful, you see, and decided to share their wisdom with others and knowledge of how to prevent floods. Eh? But this is crazy, my friend. You see, all this is floods and it's not a river. Get no. Where did all this water come from? My God, good people of
Save
earth.
your life. If you're ever kidnapped, you can absolutely get out of zip ties. This one's supposed to hold 260 pounds of force, so I'm going to show you how to get out of there. First step is tighten the zip tie. Don't worry about the tape, it's just protect myself as it cuts into the skin a little bit. I'm doing this quite a lot, so yeah. With these big zip ties, you're going to slam it on your shin. Shin is extremely hard and the best way to do it. And you're out.
Hey, it's Glamham. Have you heard about the strange, mysterious seismic waves heard around the world for 9 days?
Every single person on Earth, including you, experienced the world's first climate change-induced earthquake.
Excellent content creator. I can add to this. First, a little recap. September 2023. Strange, mysterious seismic activity going around the world. No scientists could figure out what it was. All over the world, friendships were born of scientists thinking, what are these seismic waves? What is happening to planet Earth? Well, turns out it was a tsunami in the Dixon Fjord in Greenland. Waves as high as 200 meters, 650 feet, trapped in the fjord, going backwards and forwards in a standing wave for 9 days. The strength of those waves causing the seismic activity. Well, there you have it. No, not quite. What caused the tsunami? A giant landslide with this much debris. Well, there you have it. Not quite. I thought to myself, what would cause such a great epic landslide? And I read and noticed a mention of dust seen by a satellite. Somehow in my mind I thought, explosion much? I checked out military bases nearby. Well, there's Ella Island and a military base, but it was vacant at the time, and good job because it was decimated in the tsunami. I looked a little further. Sure enough, I found this. Military exercises conducted in September 2023. Probably just a coincidence. An international training exercise to rescue brave military personnel, and I am all for that. I used to work on a military base. I was the DJ for Canadian Air Force's Baden-Baden. But back to the military training exercises. Turns out part of the military training exercises was to rescue patients in the event of a landslide. Curiouser and curiouser, I thought to myself, have there been any other big landslides and epic tsunamis? Turns out there have been, like 2021, when there was also these training exercises, and 2017, when there were also the training exercises. Probably a coincidence, I know. Well, this goes back pretty far if we go way back to the Cold War, 1958 in Alaska. Giant landslide and earthquake. Turns out it was Operation Culminating Point. Cold War exercises to practice for really bad things. Maybe like earthquakes and tsunamis. So there you have it. And I'm not saying climate change is not involved, because I'm sure something's going on that probably maybe makes those glaciers more vulnerable to landslide. I don't know. But perhaps it's not only climate change. I'll see you in the comments. Take care.
Please pay attention to what I'm about to say, because I have something so cool to show y'all. Scientists expect Star of Jacob to appear this month. This will happen September the 27th, 9/27. And he shall make a strong covenant with many for 1 week, and for a half of the week he shall put an end to sacrifice and offering. And on the wing of abomination shall come one who makes desolate, until the decreed end is poured out on the desolator. This cannot be a coincidence. We know that this 7-year agreement will transcend over the time of Jacob's trouble, which is tribulation. This star went supernova 2,000 years ago, which was around the time of the death, burial, and resurrection of our Lord Jesus Christ. And for the first time, it is able to be seen here on Earth. It will appear 1,500 times brighter than usual, making it the 50th brightest star in the night sky. And we know that on September the 22nd and 23rd, there is going to be a pact for the future about global governance, y'all. A one world order. This Star of Jacob is a sign that this is going to happen soon. I'm about to make y'all a video showing you all the signs since 2014 up until now, where we had the pre-warning for the first 3 years. The 7 years after that was the warning period, and next is the tribulation. And this is all shown by the celestial bodies. Just as the Lord said, He uses them for signs and seasons. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, your mind is about to be blown.
This clip is actually from a nature documentary called North Grid. In the video, an impressive scene of caribou running next to a large body of water is shown. A really beautiful view. However, what seems to be a quiet and spectacular capture suddenly becomes disturbing when something unexpected appears on the screen. A large bipedal humanoid, which producers later described as possibly being a female carrying an infant on its back while it hunted for food. Watch this.
Huh. Ha! My God. Could this be those Sasquatches things you have been seeing in different episodes, or just one big ape? Please, my friend, leave your comments. This is crazy.
why am I getting notifications that the Earth's core is moving backward? The very inner core of the Earth is a solid metal sphere that's almost as hot as the surface of the sun. It's a crazy place. It's surrounded by a liquid outer core, and then way up here is the mantle. And all of this is rotating the same way. By studying how long it takes for seismic waves from earthquakes to travel through the core of the Earth, scientists were able to determine that the inner core rotates a little bit faster than the mantle. Obviously, this is very difficult to measure, so scientists report slightly differing numbers, but in general, it's faster by about 0.1 degrees every year. Now, a new study was just published that provides more evidence for something that scientists have suspected for a long time, which is that the inner core is slowing down. And they agree with other studies that show that the speed seems to be slowing down and speeding up on a 70-year cycle. And at its slowest, it would be rotating slightly slower than the areas around it rather than slightly faster. So from like the surface of Earth, if we could look into the core, it would look like it was going backwards, but it's not. Everything is rotating the same way, but at its slowest, this is rotating slower than the area around it, which is fine because clearly this has been happening on and off forever, and we've never even noticed and can barely figure it out. So there's nothing to worry about, but it seems like we are approaching it being on the slower end, which happens. It happens. It's fine.
Why does Genesis 1:26 have God saying, "Let us make man in our image and in our likeness"? Hey everybody, I'm Dan McClellan. I'm a scholar of the Bible and religion. And it's not because of the Trinity. The concept of the Trinity would not exist until after the Hebrew Bible and even the New Testament had already been composed. It's a theological and philosophical innovation of the 2nd through 5th centuries CE. So it absolutely was not operative in the 6th and 5th centuries BCE. It's also not because Elohim is plural. While Elohim is grammatically plural, it is a concretized abstract plural, and so it can function as a singular noun or a plural noun. And to tell the difference, you just look at the verbs and the pronouns and the context around it. And here it's part of a verbal phrase, Vayomer Elohim, where Elohim is the subject of the verb Vayomer, which is the third masculine singular form of the verbal root amar, and so the subject has to be singular. And so Elohim there just means God. So it is a single deity speaking to multiple other deities. And we find references to other deities multiple times in the primeval history, which is Genesis 1 through 11. For instance, in Genesis 3:22, we have God recognizing that what the serpent said would happen is precisely what happened. They have become like one of us to know good and evil. And in verse 5, the serpent says, "You will become like the gods, knowing good and evil." And then at the beginning of Genesis 6, we have references to the Bnei Elohim, the children of God. These are second-tier deities who are the offspring of the high God and their consort. And then in the story of the Tower of Babel, we also have God saying to other deities, "Let us go down." So these are the other deities of the divine council, the deliberative body of gods that oversees the functioning of the universe. And this reflects the projection of human social institutions onto the heavens in their conceptualization of what God was like. So in Genesis 1:26, we have the author representing God as making plans to create humanity with that deliberative body, although it's only God themselves who ultimately goes down and engages in the actual creation of humanity. But the majority of scholars agree that when God says in Genesis 1:26, "Let us make humanity in our image and in our likeness," this is referring to the other gods of the divine council.
This is one of the most important fossils ever found. It's called D3444, catchy name, and they lived about 1.8 million years ago. Pretty crazy. They were found in Dmanisi, Georgia, one of the most important archaeological sites in the world, bar none. Hundreds of fossils were found at Dmanisi, but most importantly, these 5 crania, these 5 skulls. What's so special about D3444 though is that they lost all their teeth, and this must have happened a long time ago because the sockets have been reabsorbed by the bone. So how were they eating? They must have lived like this for years. Maybe they were eating plants, maybe they were processing their food a lot. Maybe someone else in the gang was doing all the chewing. Kind of gross, but it says a lot about society at that time.
By forming a barrier that prevents the protein in an egg from chemically bonding with the metal in a pan, both butter and oil do lessen the risk of sticking. But butter generally does a better job than oil does. See, most foods that we cook, like eggs, are mostly water. And water and fat don't like each other. So when you add an egg to hot oil, the egg and the oil actually repel each other slightly, leaving only the thinnest barrier of oil between the food and the metal of the pan. Butter, though, is rich in a few different types of compounds, like phospholipids and milk proteins, that have parts that are hydrophilic, they're attracted to water, and parts that are lipophilic, they're attracted to fat. These compounds keep the watery egg and the fatty butter in close contact, maintaining a nice, thick butter barrier between the food and the pan, and preventing bonding between them. So if you want to be totally sure your eggs won't stick, butter is the better choice.
If you want to know about AI, you have to know about RAG. LLMs are very powerful prediction engines. They take your prompt and then generate an answer based on a plausible string of follow-on text. Okay, it's predicting what is most likely to come next. As humans, we perceive this, what's most likely to come next, as an answer to the question or the prompt. The way that they do this is by being trained on every book that's ever been written and the entire corpus of the internet. LLMs are extremely good at predicting what words follow other words because it's consumed almost every word that's ever been written in the exact order that it's ever been written. However, it has its quirks, and one of those quirks is that it has a cutoff date. So like for ChatGPT 4.0, for example, has not read anything that has been written past October 2023. Okay, and even if it had, it doesn't have access to private information. It's only things that are out in the public, like the internet and public libraries. So if you ever wanted to ask ChatGPT, like, what is my vacation policy at work? It doesn't have access to your employee handbook. It doesn't know. And if you ask it something specific about you, it certainly doesn't know the answer unless you tell it and you train it on that beforehand. But that requires a lot of energy, and then you'd have to paste it in every single time you want it to reference a document. I mean, you can do it, but it's just kind of annoying. So RAG is super simple as a concept. It takes the LLM and combines it with a database of other information. This database can be specific information about you. It can be all of the journal entries you've ever written. It could be all of your text messages. It could be all of your emails. For a company, it could be your employee handbook. It could be all your financial data, whatever. It's just more information that the LLM has never previously seen and therefore has not been trained on. Essentially, when you provide a text prompt and input, it doesn't directly get sent to the LLM. Instead, it gets searched in your database. So whatever you provided as additional context, anything that could be potentially relevant to your prompt would get pulled, and then that additional information that gets pulled gets appended to the end of the prompt that you provided. So now you've got like an extra massive text string, and that whole chunk of your initial prompt plus all the additional information that got sucked out of the database gets smushed all together, and that whole thing gets sent to the LLM. And because the LLM has that additional context to go off of, it then can generate a response back to you that makes sense and isn't made up. I know this might sound like crazy science fiction or something that would be really difficult to implement, but it's actually pretty easy. And if you're interested, I can make another video showing you how to create a RAG pipeline for something as easy as your own email inbox.
This person had a crazy experience, and you guys have tagged me in this nonstop, so we're gonna watch it. I'll let you know my thoughts after.
It is not deja reve. It is a secret third thing, and I would love to know if anyone has ever experienced anything like what I'm about to say. So this happened in November, end of November in 2021. I was living with my ex at the time, and we were making dinner. I'm standing at the island in the kitchen, and she has her back turned to me. She's facing the toaster, and I remember this specifically because she was toasting bread to go with her spaghetti, and I was having a thought process of, I just had never heard of anyone toasting bread to go with their spaghetti. I'm sure that's a thing. Like, I've heard of garlic bread and spaghetti, but I just hadn't thought of like toast with spaghetti. So I was thinking about that. Again, her back is facing me. She starts talking. All of a sudden, in the middle of her sentence, my ears start ringing like crazy. Disclaimer, this is when I start to sound absolutely insane. Okay, you don't have to tell me, I know. I feel a sensation I have never felt before, which is the feeling of being above my body and slamming back into it, as if I was just somewhere else and I have just arrived in my body. And in the same way, you know when you wake up from a dream and like you're clinging to the details of the dream and it just starts to slip through your fingers the moment you wake up. Like that, I was starting to forget where I just was. But I was repeating a few things over and over again in my head from where I just was. And those two things were, why am I here again? I've already done all this and I have to do it right this time. Again, why am I back here? I've already done all this and I have to do it right this time. Over and over, that was all I retained from it, but it was a physical sensation of dropping into my body, like almost like I respawned in a video game. I had this distinct feeling that I was older. Like I don't know how to say that without sounding insane, but the first few moments of me being back in my body were spent looking around in disbelief and wonder that I was back here again, which terrified me. And simultaneously, almost as if it was like a visual, and I know this sounds fucking crazy, almost visually, I can see in front of me the paths from that exact moment. On one of the two, like, paths, if you will, is me responding normally to what my ex was saying. Like, she was saying something about her pasta bread and I responded normally to that. And then on the other side was the one that I felt like I was on, was the one where instead of responding to the bread comment, I said, hold up, I just had the most insane fucking deja vu of my life. But before I felt the path fork sort of situation, for a split second, it felt as if, and I know this sounds insane, but it's important, it felt like I was holding two memories of the same moment, and then they changed, and then that path went that way, and I went this way, and I could no longer see that, and then it all faded. It was all over in like 10 seconds. But this is where it gets insane. I say, hold up, I just had the most insane deja vu of my entire life. I went, I feel like I just slammed back into my body. That's all I said. I'm expecting her to just be like, wow, that's crazy, because that's what everyone always does. Instead, she turns around and looks at me with absolute horror in her face and says, wait, that happened to me today too. She said, I was standing in the aisle hanging things at work and I felt like I slammed back into my body. And she said, I didn't even say it out loud. She said, I felt like I was holding two memories of the same moment and then it split. And we just stood there staring at each other in absolute disbelief. And I never was the same after that. Ever. It changed my entire perception of time. Like, it broke my brain. I actually for a while was afraid that I had experienced some sort of psychosis or something, so I would talk to my therapist about it and she was like, this does not sound like psychosis to me, but it bothers me to this day because there was a distinct feeling that I felt in that moment that did not feel like deja vu or deja reve. It was distinct and it's never happened before and it's never happened since, and it fucks me up because those are the only two things I remember. Like, why was my thought, I have to do it right this time? Do what? Do what right this time? That's a lot of pressure. What happened last time? Did I die and then respawn for real? Anyway, my whole life changed after that. And for the record, I'm pleased with my life now. Like, we're good. Everything's great. Has anything like this ever happened to any of you? I don't have words for it. And since we're on the topic, I felt like it might be a good time to bring it up because I've been searching for answers. Also, fun fact, me telling that story was actually the first video I ever recorded on this TikTok account. It's still sitting in my drafts. I obviously never posted it, but I recorded that video like right after it happened because it was so insane that I was like, I feel like I should share this with the internet, but then I was scared of the internet back then. So I didn't, but now I'm telling it. And does anyone know what it was? Thank you so much.
So I'm really torn on this, right? Because the like going back into your body like that gives me astral projection vibes, like when you're astral projecting and then you like whoop, back into your body. But the fact that things were different afterwards and you felt like you were older gives me quantum immortality vibes, like you died in hop timelines. I don't know how you died. Maybe the toaster blew up. But then the fact that the girlfriend also experienced it earlier, and the fact that you saw like you literally had both memories at the same time and chose a different path and you were told to choose a different path. Like, what? Then that can't be quantum immortality. It's like something was giving you the option, like, hey, you just screwed this up and it's going to take you down like a road that you don't want to eventually go down. Maybe not even now, maybe like this road of doing this thing will lead you down this path that's not going to be good for you. Make a different choice. But this is, and to literally see like path, like footsteps paths is so cool. This whole thing is so cool and so intriguing. I have not heard anything like this. I'm not positive on what happened. I mean, I'm never positive on what happened. I have no idea. I'm just guessing, but I'm not even positive on my speculations. I need to hear everybody else's thoughts and speculations in the comments. Please let me know what you think.
Turns out we've been hard-boiling eggs wrong all this time. Instead of completely submerging them in water, just add a small amount at the bottom and steam them to cook. And what you'll end up with is an easy to peel egg that's evenly cooked with a creamy texture.
Well, it's finally done. If you love all things space, especially the International Space Station, then this project is definitely for you. With just one ESP32, 2 stepper motor drivers, a few wires, and a little smattering of code, but don't worry if you don't know how to code. This is all explained step by step. Then you'll be able to build your own satellite tracking system, just like you see here, which will point to where a satellite is in relation to where you physically are on the planet, using this very simple mechanism.
This is what alcohol does to your brain. This is a normal brain, and this is a brain of a person with Alzheimer's disease. And this is the brain of a person who has chronic alcohol consumption. You can see that those grooves between the folds are much bigger than the person who has Alzheimer's. Chronic alcohol consumption can impact the brain even more than Alzheimer's disease. Alcohol will also impact your prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for your decision-making skills and your judgment calls and being able to have impulse control. It can also result in memory loss because it causes damage to the area of the brain called the hippocampus. Another area of the brain called the cerebellum is particularly at risk for degeneration with alcohol. If this area is damaged, it can result in poor coordination, things like slurred speech, tremors, and even difficulty with walking. According to the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse, men who drink more than 15 drinks a week are considered to be heavy drinkers, and women who drink more than 8 drinks a week are considered to be heavy drinkers. But it's important to remember, if you do have an alcohol dependency, you should not stop it cold turkey. It can result in very serious complications, and if you want help, you should call this number at the bottom of the screen.
Difference between blunt and sharp.
Here's some scientific facts that sound fake but are 100% true. Your brain does not feel pain. It processes pain, but it doesn't feel pain. That's why a lot of times people are awake during brain surgeries, because they physically can't feel it. You can lose up to 75% of your liver and it will regenerate itself within a few weeks. On average, you're taller at the beginning of the day and shorter at the end of the day. This is because of gravity throughout the day compressing the cartilage between our bones, making us just a little bit smaller. Koalas have fingerprints almost identical to humans. Like, most scientists wouldn't be able to tell the difference between a koala fingerprint and a human fingerprint under a microscope. Out of all of the planets in our solar system, guess which one is the hottest? You probably said Mercury, right? Because it's like closest to the sun. It's not, it's Venus. Venus has such a thick atmosphere, it just traps all the heat. Ounce for ounce, your bones are stronger than steel. A steel bar the same width as your bone would probably crack under pressure before your bone did.
Okay, so do you remember how 5 years ago, Notre Dame caught fire? And pretty much the whole roof burned, and then this thing just collapsed. And then when they started rebuilding it, they found all these graves they didn't even know about. Most of the bodies were a breeze to identify, year-old bishops or priests. Then they found 2 sarcophagi buried deep beneath this church, and they realized these must be important people. One of them was nameplate. He was an 83-year-old man. But the second one was buried underneath, and the whole coffin was lined with lead. And unlike Mr. Antoine, his body was strangely deformed, and he died at only around 30 years of age. He had lost all of his teeth, and his head was pointy. They called him Le Cavalier, as in like the horseback knight. But it was lined with lead, there were no identifying marks, and it's been years. Why had nobody identified this? I was being driven nuts. Thank God for Google alerts. I just set one up for searches for Le Cavalier Notre Dame. A few days ago, I started getting pings galore, because they figured out who the knight is. That's him right there. Just a side note, whenever you talk about Notre Dame and their 8 billion euro renovation of the church after the fire, just be careful to stress that the entire building wasn't destroyed, because if you suggest that it was burnt to the ground, well, not only would you be wrong, but the Parisian tourism industry will send the mimes after you. Mimes make the very best assassins as hitmen for hire. Even if they're caught in the act, they will never snitch, because no matter how you torture a mime, they'll never talk. So now the man in this sarcophagus, who had had the top half of his skull sawed clean off, had been autopsied and then embalmed and then encased in lead, was not a knight at all, but Joachim du Bellay, a famous French poet and sonnet writer. who had chronic tubercular meningitis, which by the way is a terrible disease. But despite debilitating pain, deafness, losing all of his teeth, and having malformed bones, we think of how the French are romantic and create beautiful language. He's one of the reasons we believe this to this day. And historians had been searching for his grave because they had a map to its location, and there was no body there. Somehow he ended up in Notre Dame. But yeah, if you get as curious about weird topics as I do, I really recommend setting up a couple of Google alerts for yourself. Put one for your name and topics you're interested in, and just wait for the information to come rolling in to you. And sorry for the blued out topics, but there are videos coming for those, and so no spoiler alerts today. It's just fun to see them solve that mystery after 2 years of waiting.